You are listening to SPN, the Sports Podcasting Network.
Welcome to Scuderia F1, the podcast that's always up to speed with the latest Formula One news. Follow us on Twitter at Scuderia F1 Pod and subscribe to the show on iTunes and Stitcher. Now, here are your hosts, Mark Dailey and Kevin Laramée.
Hello and welcome to episode number 28 of Scuderia F1, the podcast that is always up to speed with Formula One. I'm your host, Mark Dailey, and tonight I want to do something a little bit different, and I want to look ahead to 2017 and talk about several drivers that I'm going to be watching with interest throughout the year. Now, of course, every F1 driver and team is an interesting case study in their own right, but of all the drivers in the paddock, 2017 could be a very interesting year for three of these guys in particular. So here we go in no particular order. Number 1, Lewis Hamilton at Mercedes-Benz. This year, with reigning world champion and former teammate Nico Rosberg retired from F1, Lewis Hamilton is the undisputed number 1 driver at Mercedes-Benz. Well, you could probably make the argument that he has been the number 1 driver over the last several years with Nico Rosberg, but this year being senior to Valtteri Bottas, who's joined the team from Williams Martini Racing over the winter, Lewis is the clear-cut number 1 driver. Now, the relationship that Lewis and Rosberg had over the years was at times very tense and appeared toxic in several instances, especially over the last 3 or 4 years when they've been battling it out and fighting for world championships. But these two drivers, they really needed each other, I think. Maybe Rosberg needed Hamilton more than Hamilton needed Rosberg, but they definitely seemed to feed off the rivalry that they had, which went back a long time to when these two were racing in karts when they were in their teens. And it seemed that Hamilton also did feed off the rivalry a little bit because it almost seemed that he had made it his mission to beat Rosberg and put him in his place and prove to him time and time again that Lewis is the better, the faster of the two drivers, a triple world champion. But on the flip side, Lewis, despite putting on a brave face whenever Rosberg beat him, always looked like he was putting on a bit of a show to mask his true feelings about losing to his rival. So big question this year, will Valtteri Bottas, who has recently joined the team, be able to provide a similar challenge to Lewis Hamilton? Now, it's been suggested that Bottas could be very fast in the Mercedes, but will he actually be quick enough to push Hamilton? Now, there's also going to be some questions about Hamilton's motivation and desire to win a 4th world championship, and they've been out there for the last couple of years, ever since he won his 3rd world championship back in 2015. And since Lewis broke into Formula One with McLaren in 2007, he's amassed some extremely impressive career stats to date. These include 53 wins from 188 Grand Prix starts, 104 podiums, 61 pole positions, and over 2,200 points and counting. 2016 certainly did not start well for Lewis Hamilton. His teammate Rosberg had won the first 4 races of the year, and it opened up a big points gap over him. At its largest, the gap was 43 points, and Lewis struggled to regain any ground on his teammate because he was largely plagued by very uncharacteristic reliability problems throughout the first, well, at least the first quarter of the 2016 season. But by the time Formula One went into the summer break at the beginning of August, Lewis had turned things around. He had won the last 4 races before the break and had virtually eliminated the points gap that Nico had over him. And another indicator that the momentum had swung in Hamilton's favor was the horrible race that Nico Rosberg had at Hockenheim. He ended up getting a stop-and-go penalty for having a clash with Max Verstappen when he rudely pushed his way past at the hairpin. And he really went into the summer break looking like his tail was between his legs, and he was starting to maybe lose that advantage that he had over Lewis Hamilton. But the momentum really didn't stay with Lewis for very long, because when they came back from the summer holidays, Rosberg won the next 4 races in a row, and Hamilton's title challenge was dealt a huge setback when he had an engine failure in the latter stages of the Malaysian Grand Prix. Lewis did win the final 4 races of the year, but at that point, the championship was basically Rosberg's to lose, and the German took a very conservative and tactical approach, finishing only as high as he needed to, and not pushing his car too hard, risking a mechanical failure or an incident or an accident with one of the other drivers. Although Max Verstappen and Nico did have a coming together at the Mexican Grand Prix when Nico left the door open a little bit and Max did what Max does best, but fortunately for Nico Rosberg, his car wasn't damaged. The title came down to a thrilling finale at the Abu Dhabi Grand Prix at the end of November. Rosberg managed to hang on to second place and won his first and, of course, only world championship. So what is Lewis Hamilton's motivation to stay and race in Formula One at this point? Obviously, he doesn't need the money, and with 3 world championships to his credit, he's won everything numerous times in the past. He's currently under contract at Mercedes until the end of 2018, but the questions about his motivation and desire will probably linger until that time when he either A, signs a new contract with Mercedes or perhaps another Formula One team, or B, if he possibly decides to retire. But there will certainly be questions about his dedication to not only his team, but also to the sport if we see any similar incidents of so-called unprofessional behavior like we witnessed at the 2016 Japanese Grand Prix when Hamilton appeared to be disinterested in the press conference and was playing around with his phone and interacting with his fans on Snapchat instead. One could argue that Hamilton did all he could in 2016 to snatch the world championship out of Rosberg's hands, especially in Abu Dhabi, but it just didn't work out despite his efforts, especially over those last 4 races when he did everything he could to win, and he did win those last 4 races. Unfortunately for Lewis Hamilton and his fans, it just wasn't quite enough, and those problems that plagued him throughout the entire season for that fact, are a large factor why he finished second in the World Championship. But it's quite interesting for those people out there that are saying that perhaps Lewis doesn't quite have it anymore or is maybe not as motivated to win a World Championship, is that when he was told by the team in Abu Dhabi that he was lapping too slow, which was actually part of his tactic to try and back Rosberg into Vettel and Verstappen in the hopes that he would be overtaken by those 2 drivers and end up further down in the race order, thereby giving Lewis Hamilton the points gap that he would need to leapfrog Rosberg and win the title by a couple of points. Didn't work out that way, and as it turned out, they finished 1 and 2, and Rosberg managed to hang on to the world title and win it by a mere 5 points. But during that thrilling climax, when he was going slower and slower and deliberately backing Rosberg into those guys, when he was told by the team to speed up, he didn't really react. He just kept lapping at that slower pace that he was doing. And then eventually he was told by the Toto and by Paddy Lowe that if he didn't speed up, that they were in danger of losing the race, because not only is it good for Mercedes for one of their drivers to win, it's also such a team effort, and the team loves to win, and of course they've won a couple of constructors championships in the last couple of years. But Lewis, and this was somewhat of a petulant comment, I thought at the time, was that he said that he didn't care if he lost the race because he was already losing the world championship. So what do you think? Was that evidence enough to prove that Lewis is still hungry for a 4th world championship? We'll have to wait and see. But whatever happens this year in 2017 under the new regulations, if Mercedes has designed a competitive car, and who are we to guess at this point that they don't have one, but if they do have a competitive car, Lewis Hamilton will still have to be the odds-on favorite to win the championship in 2017. Number 2, Sebastian Vettel at Ferrari. 2016 was definitely annus horribilis for Vettel and Ferrari. Seb didn't win a single race. He had 4 DNFs and finished a lowly P9 at the British Grand Prix. Among his season highlights, he'll probably be best remembered for his clashes with Danny Kvyat from Toro Rosso, which was probably part of the reason that he was dumped back down to Toro Rosso in favor of Max Verstappen. And also Seb will be remembered for his profanity-laced outbursts on race radio. Vettel's season started well, but he struggled in the second half of the year, finishing no higher than 3rd position in any Grand Prix. In the end, Vettel finished 4th in the Drivers' Championship behind former teammate Danny Ricciardo, and Ferrari finished 3rd in the Constructors' Championship. When you look at Sebastian's time at Ferrari over the last couple of years, you may get the feeling that he may have underestimated the situation when he moved there at the end of the 2014 season. This past year in 2016, Ferrari had regressed and they didn't win a single race. Sebastian and Ferrari's last win together came at the 2015 Singapore Grand Prix. Now, 2017 is going to be a crucial year for the Vettel-Ferrari partnership. Ferrari have said on more than one occasion that nobody is safe, and even Seb could be under pressure to keep his drive at the end of 2017. Now, convenient for him, perhaps, is that his contract is over at the end of the year, but depending what happens at Ferrari, will he decide to stay there? Will he want to move on to another team? Or will Ferrari even want him back after 2017, even if he wants to stay? Of course, there may be some options for 2018, most notably at Mercedes. Valtteri Bottas has only signed a one-year deal with the team, and if he doesn't live up to standards, then perhaps he could be bumped in favor of a couple of guys like Vettel and Fernando Alonso at McLaren, who are both out of contract at the end of the year. Whatever happens both on and off the track for Seb, it's going to be a fascinating situation to watch all year long. And finally, number 3, Lance Stroll at Williams. The 17-year-old Canadian from Montreal, Quebec, is making his Formula One debut in 2017. After months of speculation last year, Stroll was finally announced in November 2016 as Valtteri Bottas' teammate at Williams Martini Racing. Now, you fast forward a couple of months, Bottas is now at Mercedes as Nico Rosberg's replacement, and Stroll will partner Felipe Massa, whose F1 retirement was over almost before it began. Stroll is the latest driver in the Formula One youth revolution, but despite his young age, he has plenty of racing experience already. Like many other Formula One drivers, Stroll got his start racing karts when he was just a young boy, and made the switch to racing cars when he competed and won the championship in the Italian Formula 4 season in 2014. 2015 saw Stroll participate in the New Zealand-based Toyota Racing Series, in which he recorded 4 wins and 10 podiums in just 16 starts. Those results were also good enough for him to win the championship. That year, he also took part in the FIA Euro F3 Series, winning 1 race, and finished in the top 6 in 17 races. He also debuted at the prestigious Macau Formula 3 Grand Prix and signed with the Ferrari Driver Academy, but left at the end of the year after signing with Williams as a test driver. In 2016, Stroll stayed with Prima Power Team, which was his 3rd year with them, and won the Formula 3 championship with 11 wins. He won the championship over 100 points clear of his main rival for the title, Maximilian Günther. The official announcement that Stroll was joining Williams capped months of speculation after Massa had announced his retirement from Formula One last summer. In the weeks following the announcement that Stroll had signed an F1 contract, there was some criticism that Stroll's influential billionaire father Lawrence had basically bought his son a race seat at Williams. I thought that the criticism seemed rather harsh since Stroll has yet to prove himself in a Formula One race, but his record in lesser formulas is very, very impressive. 1997 world champion and fellow Canadian Jacques Villeneuve said recently that Stroll has proved himself in lower formulas and is worthy of having a shot at Formula One despite his youth. 2017 is going to be an interesting season for the young Canadian. Will he be able to adapt and have the same impact on the sport as fellow teenager Max Verstappen, or is he out of his depth? We'll find out in due course. Well, that's all for this episode of Scuderia F1. As always, if you want to stay up to date with everything that we have going on, then give us a follow at Scuderia F1 Pod on Twitter. That's a wrap. Until next time, thanks for listening.
Thanks for listening to the Scuderia F1 podcast. If you want to get the show notes for this episode, then head over to ScuderiaF1pod.com. Want to get in touch with us? Then email us at ScuderiaF1pod@gmail.com.
You were listening to SPN, the Sports Podcasting Network. Visit us, sportspodcastingnetwork.com.